My research deals with the perceptions of body culture in Israel in the first 2 decades of its existence. I will briefly describe the concept of the term Muskeljudentum that was coined by the Zionist leader Max Nodor in 1898 at the Second Zionist Congress. He drew his inspiration from heroic past of Jewish people and strove to restore the glory of Muscular Judaism. Nodor was influenced by 2 prominent movements that helped to shape national identity in Europe: the Deutsche Turnschaft, the German gymnastic movement, and the so-called the Czech gymnastic movement. As Zionism took shape in the late 19th and the early 20th centuries, metaphorical discourse focused on the ideal Jewish body, Zionist, masculine, and above all, the opposite of helpless traditional Jew that devoted his life to Torah study. The male body became a symbol of nation and an embodiment of its character. The Zionist movement, the primary vehicle for implementing Jewish nationalism, sought an image change and seized on sports as means of creating the new Jew. The concept of muscle Judaism was outgrowth of life in Europe, where the Jews were discriminated against for their religion and or belonging to an inferior race. When European immigrants arrived to Palestine, they discovered that the whole issue of defending the Jewish honor through sports had lost its value. Sports honor and other concepts seen as emancipatory in the diaspora became irrelevant in Israel. Engaging in sports was emptied of social and cultural significance. Physical labor was the entry ticket to the new aristocracy, more than excellence in sports. In the second decade, there has been a change in the body culture and its place among the young generation. This change was influenced by a growing trend of Americanization in the Israeli society. The process of Americanization swept Israel during its second decade of statehood. It was a process that reflected the influence of American norms, values, constructs, and institutions on countries around the world. In the 60s were a decade of changing values and new trends of Israeli society. These transformations did not skip over body culture and sports. One of the most important figures in the story is Raphael Halperin, who was instrumental in Americanizing Jewish body culture, introducing foreign components into the concept of muscle Judaism, and changing perceptions of the Jewish body. Raphael Halperin was born in Vienna, Austria in 1924, the youngest of 9 children. When the Nazis rose to power in Germany, the family immigrated to Palestine. At the age of 19, he took up bodybuilding and was soon hooked. In 1947, he toured Europe and America, studied the training methods used in the gyms. When he returned, at the beginning of October 1949, Halperin opened the country's first gym. It was located in the basement of a house in Tel Aviv. The gym operated from 10 in the morning until 10 in the night. The place was too small to admit so many people, forcing some registrants to wait for weeks until space was available. Halperin called it Machon Shimshon, Samson Institute, after the legendary biblical hero. Bodybuilding and exercising in a gym go hand in hand. Fitness equipment is designed to shape the body through intense muscle training. The new bodybuilding stars with their enormous bulk looked larger than life. The photograph, which appeared in magazines, became an icon and model of masculinity. Shortly after the gym opened, Halperin held a Mr. Israel first contest. 45 young bodybuilders displaying their oiled muscles and striking poses for all to see. The branch of sports unknown in the country was developed in the early 20th century by Eugen Sandow, the father of modern bodybuilder. Contenders were judged by criteria such as muscle mass, fat percentage, symmetry, proportions, aesthetic perfection, and overall appearance. With the help of new training methods, the body became a showcase. Exhibitionism has always been part of practice of sports, but bodybuilding, which involved the metamorphosis of the human body, took this phenomenon to a new heights, displaying the body as an artistic aesthetic spectacle for its own sake, without any conceptual thinking or ideology behind it, drew an ambivalent response from the Israeli public. On the one hand, the show was described as the dream of muscular Judaism come true. On the other hand, there were journalists who were critical of the foreign vibe of the event, which incorporated all the trapping of American commercialism and was completely out of line with the spirit of the times. The glitter, the lightning, and the show were an imitation of American model for such events. The cheap American glitz, sensationalism, and the fact that the organizer had awarded himself a trophy were troubling. The growing popularity of bodybuilding led to the opening of a second branch of Samson Institute in Haifa and a third in Jerusalem. According to the newspaper, some 6,000 young people were registered at some point or other at Halperin's gyms. From the mid-60s, Halperin embraced a new career, freestyle wrestling or entertainment wrestling, named catch. The wrestling in question was highly choreographed, a theatrical spectacle of excess, a synthesis of circle acts, wrestling, and entertainment. The script was written in advance, and the wrestler took provocative stage names, and judges were part of the show. Each wrestler adopted a fictitious persona bordering on the grotesque. The American format of the wrestlers representing different social sectors or nationalities settling their disputes in the arena was very tempting in the country like Israel, surrounded by adversaries and in a constant state of tension. Jewish-Arab matches became extremely popular in the early 70s. The huge crowds that flocked to such shows were aware of the theatrical component, but they continued to fill the stadiums. Halperin began planning the most spectacular wrestling event in Israel yet, a bout with a Jordanian wrestler known as Abu Antar. The match, which would be held in Tel Aviv in September 1973, was advertised as a modern-day version of David and Goliath. The Jordanian giant, as the wrestler was dubbed in the papers, weighed over 100 kilograms and was described as invincible. The event was completely sold out. On the evening of the fight, some 10,000 people were turned away at the box office. After a mighty battle, Halperin landed a crushing blow on opponent's skull and knocked him to the floorboards as the Jews broke into the cheers. For a jubilant crowd, facts were secondary. That he was a Jordanian or even an Arab wrestler was not at all certain. He may have been a friend of Halperin from Jaffa, a partner in his script bouts and money-making schemes. The concept of Muskeljudentum surely took on a whole new meaning. These three oriented phenomenon encapsulated the idea of American aesthetics. They were not anchored in the collective socialist worldview widespread in Israel. They turned the body into be-all and end-all, so much so that the old image of Jewish body and the values attributed to it were unnecessary. Detaching the body from its metaphoric association produced a worldly, slick, muscle-pumped, self-worshipping creature. Muskeljudaism in its new sense was toned, chiseled, and flashy. The Israeli muscle man, in other words, took muscular Judaism, emptied it from all ideology baggage, severed it from its collective values, and presented it as being in itself. Muscular Judaism, as an aesthetic display, honed in gyms and scripted catch competitions, lost its connection to Zionism and heralded the spread of Americanization in Israeli society. Thank you very much for watching and listening.